Hello and welcome to our 39th session, and in this session we are going to work on this game and make it more challenging and interesting by creating a wave of enemies. And for this we are going to study mainly about the loops. 2 sessions back, when we had to make the enemy span outside 3-meter radius of our player, we used do while loop, and here we are going to make use of the same concept. Now all of the pieces of our prototypes are functioning properly. The player, the enemy, the power up, all are flawless. The problem is that we can only experience the functionality very briefly, because as soon as you knock the first enemy off, that's it, the game's over, the player wins. If I know these enemy spheres like I think I do, they shouldn't go down without a fight. So by the end of this session, whenever all enemies are destroyed, a new wave of enemies will spawn with one more enemy than the wave before, gradually increasing the game's difficulty. In order to span all of these enemies, we will have to call the instantiate method a whole bunch of times. What you could do is just write that lines of code over and over again. But as you probably guessed, that's not the best way to do it. Instead, we'll use something called as for loop, which will loop through some code for as many times as we specify. The really great thing about for loops, as opposed to just writing the same line of code over and over again, is that you can use a variable to dynamically change the number of times the for loop will run. For the first wave, we will make the for loop run once to create one enemy. In the second wave, it will run twice to span 2 enemies. In the third wave, it can just run 3 times to span 3 enemies, and so on. So, to make all this happen, let's dive into Unity. Let us first launch Unity Hub, come into project, and you can start by launching this tilting_island6 project. However, if you doesn't have this project, you can come into new project. In the template, choose SRP Universal 3D, come into the project name, and I am going to call this as Tilting Island 7. And in eUnity projects folder, I will click on create project. Now as Unity is getting launched, come to the YouTube video page or the e-learning page, scroll down, and here in the description, if you click on more, you are provided with a Patreon link. Click on this Patreon link. This will bring you into this Junior Programmer Series Patreon page. Scroll down. Here you will see 39 SpawnEnemy Wavy Start Unity package. Now click on this to download this package. You can also download this satvik_layout.wlt layout file. Once Unity is launched, in the project panel, select this readme file, come into the inspector, and you have remove readme asset. Click on it, and in the confirmation, click on proceed. We also doesn't need this default input system_actions. Right click and choose delete, and in the confirmation, click on delete. Now if your Unity layout is not similar to my layout, you can come on the right hand side in the layout and choose Satvik. If you doesn't have this Satvik layout, come to load layout from file, and in your downloads folder, select this satvik_layout.wlt file and click on open. Come into project, assets, right click, choose import package, custom package, select the downloaded 39 SpawnEnemy Wavy Start Unity package and click on open. Now in the import Unity package dialog box, see that all is selected and click on import. Now once all the package is imported, come into the scenes here and double click on this tilting_island scene. Now we doesn't need this sample scene. Right click and choose delete, and in confirmation, click on delete. Now to span enemies one after another using the for loop, I will come into project scripts, and our spanning is controlled by the SpawnManager script. Double click to open this. If it asks to trust the author, click on yes, I trust the author. If you come into void start, the spanning of our enemy prefab happens here. Instead of spanning it directly, we are going to use for loop. So in this start statement, after the open flower bracket, I will press enter, add 2 forward slashes, loop the enemy span 3 times, and I will press enter. I am going to call my for loop. It starts with for, and then I will add open close brackets. Just like if in for, inside this there is a condition, but in case of for, there will be 3 parameters that you have to set. First, I will declare an integer I equal to 0, semicolon. Then I is less than 3 and I will end it with semicolon. This is the condition. Until the value of I is less than 3, this loop is going to continue. After every loop, I have to increment my I. So I can write I is equal to I plus 1, or the shortest way is, instead of such a long statement, I will just put I plus plus. After this, I will press enter and add open close flower bracket, and inside this open close flower bracket we will have our spanning code. So I will select this entire instantiate enemy prefab, this entire line. I will right click and I am going to cut this from here and put it inside my for loop. I will also select this comment, cut it, and above this instantiate line I will paste it. If I come to file and if I save it, if I come to Unity, allow the script to compile. Now if I play and check it, now you can see 3 enemies are spanned together. So now I will stop the playback. Now I will again select this SpawnManager script, double click to open it. In the start, let us reorganize this script better by declaring method. I am going to select all the content inside this start, from loop and this for statement, everything. I am going to select, right click, and I am going to cut it. And now I will scroll down, and after this generate spawn position, after this closing flower bracket here, press enter twice. Then I will add a comment, method to SpawnEnemy, press enter, and I am going to call this void, and with S capital, I will call this as SpawnEnemy, add open close bracket, press enter, and add open close flower brackets, and I will open this flower bracket, and now I will press Ctrl V and paste this entire code over here. I will come back into my start. I will add 2 forward slashes and the comment, call the SpawnEnemy method to SpawnEnemies, and I will call the SpawnEnemy method here with open close flower bracket and end it with semicolon. If I come here, save it, and come back to Unity, allow the script to compile. Now if I play and check it, now again the 3 enemies are spanned. I will stop the playback. If I come back to SpawnManager, in this SpawnEnemy method, we are giving this value 3 manually. Say for example, I should have a control on number of times this SpawnEnemy is going to loop. I want this number of loops to be controlled by an external variable. We are going to add our method parameters in this open close bracket, which is empty now, and now I am going to add a parameter, and the type of this parameter is, this is an integer, and I am now going to call this as enemies. Here in for, instead of I less than 3, instead of this 3, I am going to call this variable enemies here. As soon as I added this parameter int enemies to my SpawnEnemy, if you come on the top in start, you are seeing SpawnEnemy with a red line. This is because we expect an integer enemies number in the SpawnEnemy now, but here this is empty. So I have to enter some number here. I will come into line 8. After this private float span range, I will press enter and I will add 2 forward slashes, create a variable to hold the number of enemies to span, and I will press enter and I will call this as public int, and I will call this as spawnCount, and I will set its initial value here to 1 and end it with semicolon. If I come here into SpawnEnemy, here inside this bracket, and I will add this SpawnCount. If I come to file and if I save it, if I come back to Unity, once the script is compiled, if I select SpawnManager, you have SpawnCount number here. Right now it is set to 1. if I play the game and check it, I have just one enemy. I can stop it, and this number instead of 1, I can make it 5. And now if I play and check it, see now 5 enemies are spawned. Stop the playback. If I make it 9 and if I play it, you can now check 9 enemies are spawned. So I will stop the playback. This span count should now be controlled by the enemy count. That is, in every level, if the enemy count is 1, in the next level it should be 2. Next level it should be 3. So to achieve this, the first thing is, when our player hits the enemy and if the enemy goes outside this island, we want the enemy to be destroyed. When the enemy goes away from this island, because of gravity it is going to drop down. When it drops down, see the y value of our enemy is going to decrease. We are going to destroy the object based on a condition that if y value of the enemy goes to the negative direction, it should get destroyed. I am going to come into the script and double click on enemy. And after void update, after this closing bracket, I will press enter and I will declare void destroy enemy. I will declare a method. I will add open close bracket, press enter and add open close flower bracket. To destroy this enemy, I am now going to test a condition. If I will add open close bracket, and the condition I am going to test is, if transform period position period y value of my enemy is less than, say I will give some negative value, for example -2. I will come out of this bracket, press enter and add open close flower bracket, and inside this flower bracket, now I am going to call destroy, and in open close parameters, inside this I will add game object where G is small letter, and I will end this with semicolon. I am going to call this destroy enemy method inside my update. After we add the force to our enemy, I will press enter and I will call this method destroy enemy. I will go to file, save this, and coming into Unity, allow the script to get compiled. Now before I play, I come into the hierarchy and select the player, and in the inspector, if you scroll down, in the player control script, the push speed is kept very low at 3. I will increase this to 10, and the power up strength, instead of 15, I will keep it 30. And now coming back to SpawnManager, the span count is set to 1. Now if I play the game and if I check it, see now the enemy is coming and I am going to push it. As soon as the enemy is pushed out, you can see the enemy is destroyed. So now I will stop the playback. Our next challenge is, as soon as the enemy is destroyed and the number of enemy in our scene is 0, I want a new set of enemies to be spawned. To achieve this, I will come into the SpawnManager, double click to open it. I will come in the line number 10. Instead of span count, I am going to change this into enemy count. I am now going to make this private. I will come back to start here, and we had added spawn count here, and this one I will temporarily set it to 1 because this value is going to change later. I have to now get this enemy count. I am now going to come into update and I will set my enemy count to be equal to number of enemies in my scene. And how do we get a count of all the enemies in my scene? We have a function in Unity called as FindObjectsByType. Just like you declare a component, I add less than and greater than sign, and inside this I am now going to call for enemy. Mean all the object which is attached with tag enemy grouped into an array. Coming out of this greater than sign, I will add open close bracket. All the enemy object in my scene are being put into an array. If you want this array to be sorted, here I am going to call FindObjectSortMode and I am going to set this to none. Because we doesn't need any sorting to be done, you will get an error. We call this as type error. because now when the objects with the enemy tag is found by this function, it is stored in an array, whereas the enemy count that we have declared is an integer. So we have to convert this array into integer, and in this array, what is the value that we want? What is the total number of items in this array? You already know that to get the number of items in an array, we add period and we are going to call this length and end it with semicolon. The enemy will be counted in the next line here if, and in open close bracket, when my enemy count will be equal to, means I have to use two equal signs because this is, we are not assigning the value, we are comparing it. So add two equals and set the value to 0, and I will come out of this if statement, press enter and add open close bracket, and inside this bracket, when the enemy count became 0, I am now going to call SpawnEnemy, open close bracket, and end it with semicolon, and here I need the number. How many enemies has to be spanned? I am now going to come after this line number 10, press enter, add two forward slashes, create a variable to hold the wave number, and I will press enter and I will call this as private int wave number, and I will set its initial value to 1. When the game starts, one set of enemy will be spanned, and here I will set this value to wave number. When all these enemies are destroyed and when it becomes 0, then the next step here, what is going to happen is, I am going to select this wave number and I am going to add 1 to it. The shortest way to increment any value by one value is add 2 plus and end it with semicolon. So now what happens is, initial value of wave number is 1, it changes to 2, and then in SpawnEnemy, in between the bracket, I am now going to call this wave number. If I come to file and if I save this and if I come back to Unity, allow the script to compile, and now if I play the game and check it, see, initially you have one enemy, and once I destroy it, you got 2, then you got 3, you got 4. See, you are getting the enemy numbers gradually, it is increasing. So I will stop the playback. Now one last thing that I want to show here is, see, in this game we have only one power up. So we have added it in the scene. If I select it and press F, you can see just one power up added in the hierarchy. Now in every level, when the new enemies are spawned, I want one power up also to be spawned. So to achieve this, I am now going to come into my SpawnManager script, double click to open this. And now here in line number 6, after we declared public game object enemy prefab, I will press enter, add two forward slashes, create a variable to hold a reference to my powerup prefab. I will press enter. Now I will call this public. Type of variable is game object, and I am going to call this as powerUpPrefab and end it with semicolon. I have to instantiate it. I will just scroll down and I will come after this void SpawnEnemy. I will come to this closing flower bracket, press enter twice, and I am going to declare another method, void, and I will call this as SpawnPowerUp. Add open close bracket, press enter and add open close flower bracket. And now inside this flower bracket, I will add two forward slashes. I have to now span a power up at a random position. So I will press enter. To span this, I will again call my instantiate command, add open close bracket and end it with semicolon. And here in instantiate, you already know the first parameter I need is the name of the game object that needs to be instantiated, powerUpPrefab, comma. Then I have to set its vector 3 position where it has to be spanned. We already have a method here, generate span position, using which we are creating random position, and I am going to use the same method here, generate span position, and I will add open close bracket and end it with comma. So this is the advantage of using method. So if I had not declared this as a method, again I had to type this entire code. Because this is now a method, I can just call this method. And now finally for rotation, I will call my powerUpPrefab period transform period rotation, and I will end this with semicolon. Where are we going to call it? When actually the game starts, I have to come here and I have to call the SpawnPowerUp method to span a powerup. I will press enter and I will call this SpawnPowerUp method, add open close bracket and end it with semicolon. Now apart from this, as soon as the enemy count becomes 0 and when enemies are spanned, now immediately after this, again here I have to span the powerup, add open close bracket and end it with semicolon. If I go to file, save it, come back to Unity, allow the script to compile. First I am going to come here into my SpawnManager, and in the inspector you have another parameter here, powerUpPrefab. So I will come into project, open my prefab and I will drag my powerUpPrefab and attach it here. Then coming into hierarchy, I select this powerup and delete it. Now I will come to file, save this, and now if I execute the game and if I check it, see now you can see the player is spanning, and if I doesn't use the powerup, it gets accumulated. See now I used it. Okay, so now see it is getting panned. See, for every level you have additional power-ups being added here. So for every level, if you doesn't use it, all those will be accumulated. For every level you have a new power-up being added. This is working fine, and stop the playback. We have some bugs like it is flying. So we are going to rectify those later. So as of now, I will complete this session, and in our next session, as a challenge, I want you to add some additional features, and this we are going to do it in our next session.